This episode of the LCTV News is brought to you by Encompass Health, North Shore Community College, Leo Inc., Brotherhood Credit Union, and Daoulas Brothers Construction.
Good morning and welcome back to the LCTV News. I'm Danny Vittori, and whether this is your first or 50th time watching, we're glad to have you tuning in. We have a jam-packed episode today full of headlines ranging from education to summer events to news from the State House. The Planning Department joined us on the Lowdown to share some insights into their downtown parking study. Let's jump right in with the news for Friday, August 2nd, 2024. Lynn Police have been all over the news lately for their community outreach efforts. Most recently, they gave out free bike helmets at Manning Field and raffled off bikes to 6 lucky kids, all part of their initiative to encourage bike safety in the city of Lynn.
Today we're doing a bike safety day. We have our bicycle officers out here running kids through the courses, explaining traffic laws, making sure kids are safe on the roads. As you know, we're adding more bike lanes in the city. We're adding more safety aspects for it to encourage people to go out and use bicycles. So this works hand in hand with that idea of getting people out there, getting people on the roads, using their bicycles, but specifically the kids on this event. We're handing out free bike helmets. We have a raffle for 6 bikes that we're giving out today for the kids. We're giving out 6 bicycles today for the kids. We're giving them fresh fruit, snacks, things for them to encourage them to eat healthy, and we're just encouraging the kids to be out there and be active.
Here we have a course to go through. We have different goggles to show different levels of impairment. We're going to let the kids try to drive the cart, see how many cones they hit or they don't, depending on who's driving. We have different goggles, and it simulates different levels of impairment depending on alcohol use, drug use, or sleep deprivation.
So our goal is to get 300 kids today.
A body found in Walden Pond by a group of men on July 30th has been tentatively identified as 17-year-old Brian Lopez of Lynn. Identification was made based on his clothing and personal items, but the medical examiner will make a final determination. Lopez had been missing since July 26th, when he was last seen on a surveillance camera walking along Merrill Street. His phone was found later that day on Gardner Street. Lynn Police, Fire, the State Police, Environmental Police, and several community groups spent the weekend searching Lynn Woods, an area of interest, using ATVs, bicycles, and dogs. Essex County DA Paul Tucker said no foul play is suspected at this time. Dr. Yvonne Alvarez, superintendent of Lynn Public Schools, released a statement expressing her condolences to the family, friends, and classmates of Lopez, who was a rising senior at Classical. Building off the success of Mass Reconnect, North Shore Community College announced that Mass Educate will allow all Massachusetts residents who have not yet earned their bachelor's degree to attend NSCC for free. $93.5 million of the newly signed budget created Mass Educate, a new program making college free for all students regardless of age. While both programs offer free community college, they do have different qualifiers. Mass Reconnect is centered on those aged 25 and over without an associate or bachelor's degree, while Mass Educate would cover any student over or under 25 who has already received an associate's degree. There are also requirements for both programs. Those interested must complete FAFSA, or if you're not eligible, the Massachusetts application for state financial aid. Apply to NSCC and enroll in an approved course of study. Classes begin in the fall, but applications are open all year and there is no fee. Applicants must also have physically resided in Massachusetts for at least 1 year before beginning classes, have earned a high school diploma or the equivalent, be enrolled in at least 6 credits per semester, and maintain academic progress in accordance with the college requirements. If you took a walk along Red Rock Park, you may have seen people set up with easels last weekend. This was all part of a Plein Air Painting series made possible by a Better Beaches grant. Organized by Annette Sykes and Abby Valencia, those of all skill levels could make their own creations based on the beautiful landscape around them.
I would like to talk a little bit about the Plein Air Painting at Red Rock Park program for 2024. We are out here today in beautiful Red Rock Park painting with the community. We have all of the paints, the brushes, the canvases, and the easels, everything that we need, and it was all provided by the Better Beaches grant as part of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. Abby Valencia and I have been working together for the last 3 years on this project. For many of the artists, it's the first time that they are painting in the park or painting outside. It's a plein air painting event. Plein air meaning open air in French. The mental health and the physical health benefits that one gets from art, from making art, are the same whether you are Rembrandt and can draw or paint at a high level, or if you're just picking up a brush for the first time. I'm thrilled to see that there are just such a diverse range of people that come to the park, and to be able to have this grant from Better Beaches to do this kind of a project and share something that I'm so passionate about and that Abby's so passionate about. It really, it's using the space here that we have in a different way. And it's for all ages, from the tiny ones. I think the youngest has been about 2.5, all the way up to 102.
The Adria's Health Equity Foundation announced 8 recipients for a Youth as Health Care Change Agents grant, and Lynn Community Health Center made the cut. This grant is a new initiative focused on organizations in Eastern Mass to help youth achieve their full potential as health educators, health navigators, future healthcare professionals, and community health advocates. With their portion, LCHC will be launching a first-of-its-kind Community Health Center Student Fellowship Program for Lynn students aged 14 to 18. Through this program, they will receive mentorship and opportunities to shadow those working in the healthcare profession. Additionally, gaining access to health education, training and advocacy opportunities while exploring their own potential path to a healthcare career. LCHC is working to break down economic and social barriers to high-quality, comprehensive healthcare by building a stronger foundation with the city's youth. As part of the application process, a design session was held, allowing youth to co-create the program being made possible by this grant. After a decade of work, Barry Park unveiled a brand new playground, complete with ADA accessible equipment. A large crowd gathered at the park for the ribbon-cutting ceremony to recognize all the government officials and community leaders who made this a reality.
The park history kind of starts back almost about 10 years ago, before I was actually an elected official. It was the year before I was about to take office, and I noticed that we had done some grant funding for other parks. I had met with Jamie Marsh from Community Development and asked Jamie, how come not Barry? Why isn't Barry on this list of places that need to be done? And he promised me that they would make Barry the next park. So with that being said, we got together, got people together, got a great firm, Brown, Richardson and Rowe, who helped design a lot of this stuff. And we got things working, and we went after what they call the PARC grant, P-A-R-C. It's a grant that the state gives every year for communities that need upgrades in their park system, and we were able to get the funding for it. So one of the things that makes Barre unique and why it was funded is because a lot of climate change and coastal resiliency programs that come into play, especially with flooding, and this park used to flood. It will still flood at times when there's heavy rain, but with the new pavement that's here that allows the rainwater to go through, and the tanks that are in the ground here to absorb and hold that water during storm events. Also, the swales that are around the edges here at the park will help with that rainwater flow. Taking out the bleachers that were here at one point, which were all concrete, that opens up a really big surface area for rainwater to get into the ground again. The elevation of the playground, or most of it, is also a factor in it. And then beyond the rain events and storm events, the features, we have a lot of inclusionary things here for people who have disabilities. There's some merry-go-rounds and things that are wheelchair accessibility. There's some sensory things that are here for people with disabilities. There's a sensory slide here. And we wanted to make sure that people, when they were coming to this park, they felt like there was something for everybody. And that's something we would like to continue to do going forward into the other parks in the city also.
1, 2, 3.
You read that headline correctly. Biotech is coming to Lynn Tech with the addition of a biotechnical course beginning in the 2024-25 school year. It will begin with 18 students, and an additional 18 will be added in each of the next 3 years, bringing the total to 72 by the time the first group are seniors. Biotech will be one of 17 shops offered at Lynn Tech, which will welcome a freshman class of 340 students. After spending a week exploring each shop their first semester, freshmen select their top 3 and are placed in one of those. The biotech lab will be built in the Tech Annex building, a teacher has already been hired, and a second one will be brought in further down the line. Mass DOT announced the construction of a shared-use path on the Lynnway, stretching from Market Street to Nahant Street, beginning on July 31st. Construction will take place from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. As part of this project, a travel lane will be permanently eliminated and replaced with a 10-foot wide two-way bicycle lane. During construction, drivers should expect delays and speed reductions as indicated by signage and police details. All scheduled work is weather dependent and could be impacted by emergencies. Splash pads are located all around the city for use by residents during the summer months. LCTV made a PSA with the locations and hours of operation for these splash pads. Take a look.
The City of Lynn's splash pads are now open daily from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There are 4 splash pads located throughout the city at Flax Pond Park in Ward 1 on Chestnut Street, Kiley Park in Ward 3 on Sanderson Ave, Neptune Boulevard Park next to Lynn Tech in Ward 6, and Barre Park on Waterford Street in Ward 7.
After several versions passed between the House and Senate, the Massachusetts legislature passed a $58 billion budget for fiscal year 2025. This budget includes $1.8 million for the Greater Lynn area, with the largest investments being $168,000 for the Lynn PD's Behavioral Health Unit, $100,000 for the E-Team Mechanist Training Program, $90,000 for the Phoenix Food Hub, and $50,000 each for the Catholic Charities Food Pantry in Lynn, the LCHC Recuperative Care Center, and Girls on the Run Greater Boston. This budget also encompasses investments in the Department of Conservation and other entities working to maintain the beaches and parks of the North Shore. Save the Harbor, Save the Bay will receive $100,000 to support their work on the beaches, as well as another $290,000 for matching grants to support public programs as part of their Better Beaches grant program. $55,000 is also being allocated for the maintenance of Red Rock Park. And for the first time in state history, the FY25 budget will allow individuals to be identified with a non-binary X on their birth certificate and, quote, enshrine into law the current practice of allowing an individual to select a non-binary X gender designation on their driver's license, end quote. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren announced the reintroduction of the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act at Urban Edge on Monday, accompanied by 30 mayors, including Mayor Nicholson of Lynn. Warren cited the fact that 40 years ago, the average home in Boston cost 4.5 times the salary of a public school teacher. Now, average housing costs come in at nearly 11 times their salary. Additionally, 42% of houses in Boston are rent-burdened, and 65% report not being able to meet their housing costs, according to the Chief of Housing for Boston. Warren is reintroducing the AHEM because she feels that more federal aid is required to combat the housing crisis. As it stands, this bill would invest $500 billion over the next 10 years for the creation of 3 million new housing units and a 10% decrease in rent for middle and working class families. The bill would be funded by adjusting the estate tax, so the wealthiest would contribute a small piece of their millions to this crisis. Mayor Nicholson spoke in support of this bill following the press conference, quote, housing is one of the top issues facing the city, and while we are making great progress, enhancing federal involvement in the way this bill proposes with the flexible local communities need would be transformative, end quote. Last year, LCTV produced a piece on the free little libraries scattered across the city. Entering the last month of summer, this was the perfect time to show the piece again, reminding the entire community of the importance of literature.
The city of Lynn is full of parks. Just like parks, Lynn is also full of little free libraries, some nestled in the corner of a neighborhood, and some there for all to see. You may have seen these while out and about and wondered, what are these little buildings? Within each lie various books of all types. Book lovers of all ages are encouraged to both take books to read, as well as share their own. And the reason Lynn has so many of these libraries is thanks to the work of Jan Plourde and the REAL program. Jan sat down with us to discuss REAL and the little free libraries.
I started the REAL program in 2013. After seeing a focus on literacy was not there, I started it with a handful of people that joined our board. The issue here is one public library for 100,000 people is not a realistic resource for this many people, and especially people who come from places where they haven't had literacy.
The REAL program welcomes local youth year-round.
Children are the biggest resource the city of Lynn has. We're just here helping to nourish that.
One of the youth sat down with us to discuss literacy, the REAL program, and the little free libraries.
I like the REAL program because I can interact with a lot of people, meet new friends, and I get to read, learn how to read, and I always have some playtime. I just think that REAL's a blessing that I could know Jan, all the other people that come here. I don't know what it would be like if I didn't have these people by my side.
Jan believes that higher literacy rates can help solve some of the many issues facing Lynn's residents.
Literacy is what's going to help them get out of that same cycle of looking for the monthly need of shelter, food, and clothing. The most successful nations in the world, the most successful cities in the country, the most successful communities in our own state are people with high literacy rates, and that's what we're trying to do here.
With that mission in mind, the REAL program have been busy building and installing little free libraries around Lynn, often with help from outside organizations such as Breckenridge Capital Advisors. Funding and supplies for the libraries have been mostly donated by individuals.
Todd Bohl is the founder of the Little Free Library Association out of Wisconsin. Now it is actually a worldwide movement, and we here in Lynn are trying to be known as the city of readers. The concept of the Little Free Library is take a book, leave a book. But here, people don't have books, and when they get books, they don't want to return them. Personally, I don't mind. I will just keep providing books.
Reading's important in life. If you don't read, you can't do a lot of things. You can't succeed in life. If you know how to read, then you could go so far in life.
We have one in front of the Real program at 17 Atlantic Street. 4 times a week we fill the box. We have collected and distributed over 240,000 children's books since 2013 now.
As of the summer of 2023, there are approximately 70 free little libraries from the Real program, with the goal of getting at least 250. A full map can be found on the Real program website showing all of them.
The free little libraries are so good. The fact that there's just a little free library out in the street, if they can't afford anything, they could go and get a book. They'll learn how to read and maybe come back a next time.
Children need literacy just like we need love. We can't define love, but we know when we have it and we know when we don't. And that's the same with literacy. People understand illiteracy is bad, but don't understand literacy is good.
Hitting cleanup, the sports update. The Navigators wrapped up the 2024 season at 19-24. However, they did post a 6-2 record over their final 8 games, finishing the season on a high note, beating the Martha's Vineyard Sharks 7-3 on the road. The first 3 series after the All-Star break were losses for the Red Sox. They finally won a series, taking 2 of 3 over the Seattle Mariners. In a 14-7 win, the first 2 innings were slow, but the Sox exploded in the third, batting around the order to score 7 runs. Supporting a strong outing by Nick Pivetta, who punched out 10 and only gave up 3 runs and 6 2/3 innings of work. For Boston, Masataka Yoshida, Romy Gonzalez, and Dominic Smith all homered in the contest, with Yoshida leading the team with 4 RBIs. The second game went to the Mariners 10-6, but the Sox grabbed the finale 3-2 from a walk-off RBI double by Rafael Devers in the 10th. The Planning Department released a survey last month in regards to the parking situation in Downtown Lynn. They have been using this qualitative data in collaboration with quantitative data to determine how existing parking spaces can be best utilized for all those who use them on a daily basis. Here is the lowdown. Hello and welcome back to the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Danny Vittori, and today we welcome back on Aaron Clausen from the Planning Department. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Great. So we'll jump right into it. A big thing you want to focus on is the new parking strategy that you're unveiling for downtown. You want to give people a little intro of it? Yeah,
sure. Thank you. The downtown parking strategy is one of our bigger planning processes right now. And the origin of that project came out of Vision Lynn, which was the comprehensive plan we talked together about a little while back. But as you might recall, we had identified in the comp plan these growth districts, these areas where we want to see new development in the city, broken down into 2 different types. You had a transformed district and an enhanced district. And the downtown is a great example of one of those enhanced districts whereby we want to see new development infilling in vacant spots, but is sort of supporting and complementing the character of that place, in this case the downtown. And what we heard consistently, and we have seen, I think, both just in, as I move through downtown, that there's a need to really figure out how to optimize our parking, our public parking policies, to not just support the existing businesses, residents, and other institutions that call downtown their home, but also make sure that we're developing a parking strategy that supports future growth.
And that's a large project. I mean, you do specialize in large projects, but what's the process been like so far? How has it worked?
Yeah, so we brought on a consulting firm called Stantec about 6-7 months ago. They're really they're focused on this kind of work. They've done a lot of different parking strategies in downtowns and other urban areas. But the process looks very similar to many of the other planning work we do, whereby we do a lot of existing conditions analysis. We do a lot of engagement with the community to collect qualitative information, to understand people's experiences, and then take and sort of assess what we have there and formulate responses, actions and strategies that can address those what we're seeing as potential barriers or opportunities. So in this process, we've had some pretty good engagement with online surveys, a couple public workshops, open houses, and then stakeholder engagement. And then as part of the existing conditions analysis, Stantec goes out and they take a in-depth inventory of what is the parking facilities in the town, both on-street or off-street, public or private. What's the infrastructure supporting those, like signage, meters, that sort of thing, just to get a sense for what is going on. And I think the one thing we've heard pretty loud and clear from the beginning of this process is that the parking program right now isn't really serving anybody very well. Certainly there are places where we can see that people have pretty adequate access to parking, but the surveys were pretty clear that we need to think through another alternative. But what we did find in the existing conditions analysis, part of that inventory is Stantec goes out and actually counts all the cars during certain times of days and days of the week. Okay. And so what they found is that we actually have a decent amount of supply. So there's a little over 7,000 parking spaces in the study area downtown. And overall, the peak day, peak time, which was I think a Thursday midday, there was about, I think it was 58% utilization. So that speaks to some availability there. And also just to sort of, that's the overall data. There's about 65% utilization for public on-street and off-street parking. So still some capacity to work with. But what we also found, aligned with the feedback we heard in the survey, is that there are very much hot spots in the downtown where parking utilization is at capacity, or in some places even above, like Mount Vernon and Exchange Street, Central Ave, City Hall. I think I've talked a little bit about. So there's spots that are really super busy, but there are areas where there's quite a bit of capacity to work with.
And so I was really surprised when I was reading that, the capacity. And do you have, I guess, a number that you'd like to reach, a capacity you'd like to reach? Maybe can't get 100, but what's the goal? Yeah,
that's a great question. Generally speaking, what we shoot for, our target for utilization is around 85% of utilization. And the thinking behind that, or the logic behind that, is that what 85% utilization will mean is that at any given block on-street parking space, there will be at least one space available. So as you're driving along trying to find a parking spot close to your destination, you're very likely to find this space within that block. Same goes for off-street parking. If you know you're going to be in downtown for some time, you don't need to park on the street. You can find an off-street parking space pretty simply within walking distance. So that's the target utilization. And based on what we found, we've got a little bit of room to work with. We just need to sort of manage that a bit better.
And you said you're about 6 months into this process. What are some of the next steps going into this? Yeah, so we just had our second public workshop a couple weeks ago with an open house. I think it was last Tuesday. We are currently reviewing draft recommendations that Stantec has put together for us. We unveiled those at the workshop, and online on the Lynn in Common webpage, we have a survey with information. If you want to dig into it a little bit, you can give us some more feedback, and I'll talk a little bit more of that later. But essentially, there's 4 general areas that Stantec has created recommendations for us.
with about 20 to 25 recommendations to consider. And it really revolves around this idea of creating a bit more flexibility in the parking regulations and in managing demand through pricing so that it's more flexible and responsive to how people actually park downtown. So for instance, just as an example, one thing we've heard is that, in the survey, a number of folks who responded said they left downtown earlier because they were going past their 2-hour on-street parking limit. So they actually left downtown rather than spending more time here, maybe spending more money. We want to get rid of that incentive. We want to create an incentive for people to stay as long as they desire. So really looking at removing time restrictions across the board and using pricing as a way to incent different parking behavior. So if you want to park on street right in front of the store you want to go to, maybe it's a little bit more expensive because that's more convenient. But if you're willing and able to park off street within 2 or 3 blocks, it would be much less expensive, much less sort of overhead in terms of when and where and how. And by doing that, you're able to sort of spread out that utilization across your whole resource area.
And even what you said about the timing, I mean, I've even sometimes been in places where I go, okay, how long am I going to be here? Is it going to be longer than the 2 hours? And that would be that'd be interesting if you didn't have to think about that as much.
Right. I mean, it creates a little bit of anxiety. You came downtown to do some things, and now you got to keep an eye on your watch. And if you go 5 minutes over, you could have a $25 ticket. We would rather create more flexibility for the parking user so that they could pay for 3 hours and say it's $3 for that 3 hours, but there's no concern. So that's a piece of it. The other piece is looking at how can we make sure that it's easy to understand. The signage, wayfinding, access to parking lots is more available to a broader user type. So, because right now, some off-street parking lots it's very restricted to license holders. So those are some of the recommendations that we're working through at the moment. Once we get feedback by the end of this week, I think it's Friday the 28th, Stantec will take those recommendations, refine them a bit, and turn it into an implementation strategy.
Okay. And when would you expect to see that?
Yeah, we hope to have the plan completely done by the end of summer, early fall, and there'll be some more engagement with policymakers, whether it's the City Council, the Parking and Traffic Commission, Off-Street Parking Commission, to make sure everybody sort of understands what is built into the plan and why it's a solid approach to dealing with what we have.
And I know that we do have to wrap up in a moment, but you'd mentioned that you wanted to circle back to the survey as well. Like, where can people find it? What's asked of them? Yeah,
thank you. Perfect. This is a great plug. So again, by the end of the week, we're still receiving comments on those recommendations. On the webpage, it's lincolncommon.com/parking. There's a survey there where folks can respond to every single recommendation, whether they like it or don't like it. But we also ask for qualitative feedback. So any detail, it's helpful for us. We learned a lot in the surveys. We had over 300 responses to our survey. Wow. And it helps sort of build context for developing the response to or creating a strategy for making sure that there's parking downtown.
It adds context to all of the numbers piece of the data.
That's right. Yeah, you've got a lot of numbers, and you also need to understand what the real world experience is.
And I will say, before I wrap up in a moment, was there anything else you wanted to mention that I hadn't touched upon?
With the parking strategy, no. As we wrap that up, I'm excited to see how folks feel about this. I think it's a great strategy. The other thing I would add to it, just before we talk about a couple other items, is that it's a iterative process. What's important about the solutions that are being proposed here is that we continually assess what the utilization is, because we may find 2-3 years down the line that we need to start looking at creating more parking, because hopefully we're seeing more people coming to our downtown as a regional destination. We really want to support that idea. So it's iterative, and I think this is a first step to really coming up with a flexible and dynamic parking response. Great.
Well, you've done a great job of explaining it for all of us to understand it who are not in the parking planning strategy. But I want to thank you again for coming on and talk about it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. And once again, I'm Danny Vittori. This has been the Lynn Lowdown, and we'll see you next week with more guests.